Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Melanie Schaffmeister. I'm the president of the Merion Civic Association, and on behalf of the Civic Association, I want to thank all of you and all the candidates for participating in tonight's school board candidate forum for the Lower Merion. I hope you enjoyed tonight's event. If you do, I ask that all please join your local civic association. Because if you enjoyed this event, we can put more types of events on for your community, here in the community. And lastly, let me please introduce. Susan Guthrie will be our moderator tonight, and as soon as she steps back, I will pass the podium on to her to begin tonight's forum. Thank you.
Good evening. As Melanie said, I'm Susan Guthrie, and I'll be the moderator tonight. There are 10 candidates vying for 5 positions on the Lower Merion School Board. All 10 were invited to attend this forum, and 8 of those were able to join us tonight. Spahr and Rob Eckstein were unable to make it. The packet that you received at the door or access through the QR codes that are posted around the room contain biographical information and responses to 3 questions from the 8 candidates who made submissions. That information will serve as a formal introduction for the candidates tonight. I want to make a side note before I go on. The candidates supplied the information through a Google form that malfunctioned along the way. So some of the candidates were able to supply longer answers than others. The intent was that the answers would be limited to a certain word count, and that was not ultimately what happened. So I want to call that out. And then in fairness to the candidates, they've been invited to submit longer responses. We'll make edits to that document and post an updated document to the Merion Civic Association Facebook page. And my apologies to the candidates for that. That was not intentional. A video of tonight's forum will also be available via the Merion Civic Association Facebook page. We anticipate the video will be available for viewing at some point over the weekend. I want to make a few comments about the format of the forum. A few minutes ago, the candidates each chose a sealed envelope containing a number between 1 and 8. That number determined both their seating positions and the questions they will answer tonight. Each candidate will be asked to address 4 randomly assigned questions. In addition, candidates can volunteer to answer 2 more questions of their choice. If candidates want to volunteer to answer a question at any point during the discussion, they can hold up one of the 2 index cards they were given. So if somebody want to demonstrate, there you go. They will be given the opportunity to speak after the assigned candidates have their turns. If multiple candidates wish to join in, we will proceed from the audience's left to the right down the table. After responding, the candidates will drop their index card on the floor in front of the table to make sure there's no double dipping. Minutes before we began, we provided the full list of tonight's questions to the candidates. However, they don't know which questions they will be assigned. There will be no opening statements. For the question and answer portion of the forum, candidates will be allotted 2 minutes each to answer a question that was assigned to them and 1 minute for volunteer responses. Candidates will have 45 seconds each for closing remarks. Our timekeeper will signal candidates when they have 30 seconds remaining, and again, when time is up, candidates will be allowed to wrap up by finishing their sentence. We ask that you refrain from clapping or cheering during the event, and now without any further delay, I'll introduce the candidates starting immediately to my left is Shayna Kalish, then Christina Fink, then Lucy Klain, then Shawn, Subha Robinson, Mary Brown, Tannia Schrieber, and Peter Lee. Okay, now, without any further ado, we will begin the question and answer phase of the evening. So the first question goes to Tannia. Well, the 2 candidates who will respond to the first question are Tannia first and Lucy second. Here's the question. Consider the following 2 facts. Our 2 high schools were recently ranked 25th and 28th in the state. For Lower Merion High School, that was by far the worst ranking in memory and possibly ever. And two, based on the last 3 years of PSSA math results, the proportion of students performing in the two highest levels of total 4 levels decreased by 22 percentage points, from 72% to 52%, and that decrease was between grades 6 and 8. With all that in mind, do you think these statistics signal that there is a problem in the school district? If so, how would you go about addressing the statistics? If not, explain why. So up first is Tannia.
So obviously this is a huge disappointment for our community, but this is even easier, thank you. Obviously these results were a huge disappointment for the community, but sadly I think that there was people who've been saying for quite a while that on the course we were on, that this was what they feared, which was that we would have leadership that continued to say that because we had the highest scores, everything was great, and not look at the lingering effect of changes that were made or changes that we choose not to make, and how that might, over the course of years, have a short-term and a long-term impact on the students. So it's hard to say whether or not what we're seeing now is a 2018, 2019 problem, or it's something that, I mean, these children have been with us for 6 years, 7 years. It could be something that happened 6 years ago. So if we want to change things like this, we need to figure out what it is that's been happening overall with the curriculum and compare it to what's been happening in other schools that haven't had these challenges. And I think that that is one of the things that I keep saying is that we can't just rest on our laurels. We can't say because we've been the best, we are the best, and we will continue to be the best. Staying the best at anything requires diligence and proactive innovation. That said, I am concerned about the idea that we drive a school district with such a strong emphasis on tests. The fact that we're looking at these scores and saying that this is what the strength of our school, it really downplays the importance of things like mental health, the school start time issues, etc. There's a lot more to raising a whole child when you have them most of their waking time for 13 years in this system. It concerns me when we put such a focus on these grades.
Hi. I'm going to answer this in 2 parts because I think that there's 2 different issues going on. Sorry, thank you. 2 different pieces of information here. First, talking about the rankings. The thing with rankings is that most, and especially the U.S. News and World Report, which is the primary rankings that people look at, they are focused specifically and very highly on how many AP tests are taken by students at a particular high school. And at Lower Merion, in both high schools, we do not, or the district does not require students to take the AP test. They encourage it, but it's not a requirement because one of the focuses of the district is on sort of the holistic well-being of the child and trying to reduce stress. And a lot of kids just find this very stressful. And so we don't force them to take the test. They take it if they want to. And when you look at the Heritage ranking, and let me just say that that was a specific decision that this district made, the superintendent made many years ago. So, and you can see when that decision was made and when the rankings started to drop. The other piece of it with Heritage High School is that the rankings don't include IB tests. So you have probably 50 seniors this year and about maybe 40 seniors and 60 juniors this year that would normally most likely be in AP classes that are doing the International Baccalaureate program instead. And so those kids, they aren't taking the AP tests. And so just by virtue of that, they're going to be lower. On the math piece of it, it is something that is a problem, and the district has started looking into that. And in fact, because of this, they are changing the math curriculum for the middle school grades. But I also want to point out that if you look at the PSSA scores across the state, this is a trend that has been across the state. The number of kids that are below basic across the state is like 40%, or something ridiculously high, which makes me think that there might be an issue with the test itself.
I'll get to play the card and use
Exactly.
Christina, before you start, if you would just
drop your card in the front of the table, so we're just, there we go.
Okay, I think it's a big problem. And I think we can't be spending almost $32,000 per year per child and basically not have fantastic rankings. Number one, I think we are using too much whole language, and I think we need to move back to phonics. We need to have better reading results because of phonics. That's what you do when you have a problem with reading, you move back to phonics. And if you read about whole language, it's a big problem. We are not connecting the information that we are teaching the children in school to real life. There's no connection. If you talk to high schooler after high schooler that they don't see the value in the information that they're learning. I think we need to inspire them more to learn. We have 40% of parents that are hiring tutors, and we're still getting those results, and I think Common Core is a complete debacle, and I think it is showing up in the results now in our high schools, because also parents can't even teach their children how to do math anymore. So I think there's a number of different problems here, and that's what I have to say about that, but it's a big problem, and we better fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Question number 2 will be answered first by Shayna and then by Peter. Here's the question. The board president is the formal communication conduit between the board and the administration, is responsible for making board committee assignments, and conducts the monthly business meeting. As a result, the board president wields a lot of power. What will you do if you disagree with the board president?
Thank you. So I look at the school board as sort of a mini democracy. Everybody gets elected to their position, and the school board president is elected by the other board members. If a school board president were acting in a way that I found unacceptable, that's something that you can take up within the next round of school board elections there. To that end, if there were specific issues that I found concerning with the school board president, I would of course speak to my fellow board members. I'm not an island. I wouldn't want to work on projects alone. And one board member can't do anything alone. So I would speak my piece. I would make what I would hope would be a convincing argument, and I would engage in thoughtful, nuanced, and passionate debate with the rest of the board. And in the end, the issues get voted on. So if there is a really issue that we're standing apart from some portion of the board, then I believe that unacceptable action would likely get voted down. If not, we could work in concert, we could come to some sort of agreement, and then the issue and come back together. Thank you.
Being a board, everyone governs by consensus. I would expect there to be respectful and reasonable debate. Certainly, everyone would be welcome to express their opinions. I've been, as a consultant, I've been in a lot of boardrooms and, been involved in many discussions where there was significant disagreement. I think the key to all of that is hearing everyone out, expressing your opinion, trying to guide the conversation towards the direction that you think it should go. Ultimately, though, everyone's vote counts, and I think we'll be able to come to reasonable decisions.
Anybody want to opt in? No? Okay. Thank you. Question number 3. The first respondent will be Mary, and the second respondent will be Christina. Here's the question. A recent survey conducted for LMSD on high school student well-being found that only 33% of LM students and 40% of heritage students are either purposefully or fully engaged in learning. What factors do you think are driving this outcome, and what steps could LMSD take to ensure more students are engaged learners?
This is the first time I'm seeing this, so I'm reacting as a parent and as a community member. I'm concerned if students perceive this, if this large percentage of students perceive that they're not engaged. I would engage the students in a forum and in focus groups to see what suggestions they have. I would also include all the stakeholders, to use a trite expression, but I would include teachers and administrators, staff members are also a very important part of the school community with students, and see this as a team effort at deciding how the students could get more engaged in their learning. I do know that extracurricular activities somehow compensate, and I am involved in various after-school activities with high school students from Merion and Merion. But I think that the core of the day, the academic core, should be felt strongly and conscientiously engaging by the students.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple thoughts on this. The first thing to me is always that I grew up with a psychiatrist as a father. And one of the things that he did is he worked with high IQ, like really high IQ students that were underachievers. And one of the things that all of his studies and his whole team always found is that you have to engage something called the general systems theory, which is you've got to connect all the information that they're learning in school to real life to make it real for them so it's meaningful why they want to learn this. So we have to come up with a way to connect it all. It can't just be this routine information where they have an exam and it's in the school and it doesn't mean anything to them. The second thing that's really critical and important is teachers. We have really great teachers at Lower Merion, but we have to make sure that they connect with the students. We have to have inspirational teachers. The most exciting thing is when your son or daughter comes home and says, oh my God, I really love this teacher. And then they're engaged for the rest of the year. I've had that experience with a kid who hated reading, horrible reader, and he goes to Harrington, and Miss Ochio Grosso is his 9th grade teacher, and he comes home after 6 weeks and says, oh my God, Mom, I really love this teacher. And he hates reading, and he hates writing, and he gets an A in their class. I'm telling you, it's all about the teachers sometimes. You have to make sure you really are stressing that. We have to connect our students to what's outside the classroom. My kid, I've been here for 19 consecutive years as a parent, and my youngest kid has been on almost no field trips, nothing. So basically, how do you connect the outside world to what they're learning in the classroom? It's a complete debacle. I cannot believe that Lower Merion School District hasn't had my kid go outside the classroom. And then how do we engage nature with the children in order to get them more energized and inspired? So I think those elements can be very helpful to a lot of our children, and we have to think outside the box in terms of engaging them, because I think they are stressed, and right now they're spending too much time in the classroom, and I think we need to think about the whole thing dynamically. So those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Shayna?
So I would like to just hit on the student experience aspect of this. I believe the survey that's being referenced is the Challenge Success Survey that the school recently participated in. And what it really pointed to was a lack of engagement and really high stress levels in our kids. So what I would focus on if I were elected is to go back to the strategic plan that the board put in place in recent years, and specifically the focus on student-centered schools. So I really want to approach education as adults. We really strive for work-life balance. I think we want to try and provide that for our kids. I would really want to emphasize homework that is minimal and meaningful, and to provide an abundant opportunity for physical movement, sports, a lot of club sports. There's really high participation in that. I think that's really beneficial. And the arts, I would absolutely support the arts and dance.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Question number 4. First respondent will be Subha, and the second will be Shayna. Do you feel the district meets the needs of minority students? If not, please give specific examples where improvements could be made.
So, I don't want to jump.
So the issue with minority students is one that can be experienced through the United States. It's called an achievement gap. And the minority students are being serviced as well as other students are. However, I don't believe that we're meeting all of their needs. That means that we need to look at a strategic plan to guide us in terms of identifying and focusing us into areas where we can do better for the students. We're already doing restorative practices so that we're not expelling students on their first infraction. And we are trying to open up avenues where students can find an adult that they feel comfortable in going to when they have a problem. Another thing that we're doing is we're revising our screening procedures for gifted education so that we can identify more students of color and more students that are being missed currently. We need to continue to focus in on these issues, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we're serving all of the students equally well.
You're going to get sick of hearing me. I absolutely agree with Subha that our biggest issue with facing minority communities and communities of color in our district is the achievement gap. I know some of the issues that the district have had with that is partly due to tests changing over the years, so it's hard to get the appropriate information we need. So I would definitely start by measuring against expected improvement for these kids instead of straight scores to really accommodate everybody so nobody's getting left out in that way. I would also want to work with the CARE task force to include a racially diverse community in discussions of education. I do not represent most minority communities, and I don't stand to speak for all of them. I would be foolish to try, but I would very much strive to hear the voices of the families in our community and in our schools to really see what they need from us as a district. I would want to redistribute academic support specialists based on student population rather than just one per school. I was at a education meeting for the school board a couple of months ago, and Dr. Hall was talking about how a school that has 500 kids and a school that has 1,000 kids might have one reading specialist for each school, but the ratios are off. If we readjust that, then each kid, if it's in that achievement gap, may get that closer one-on-one individualized attention. There is currently right now, per the strategic plan, a program evaluation being done for kids that are falling into the achievement gap. And one of the things that's coming out in the preliminary findings is the need for improved data management. I really think we need more information from the district side. And so I think getting more information from the district side combined with getting the input from minority families will really help us going forward to see those families.
Thank you. Okay, question number 5.
Can we ask the moderator to get a little closer to the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Very hard to question.
I will lean in. Okay. Mary?
All right. This is a very thoughtful question, and it's very important because all of our students are part of this community. And another way of thinking about the lack of fulfillment for minority students, or for any students, is to change the wording a little bit from achievement gap to opportunity gap. And another way in which we could serve our students who aren't enjoying fully and benefiting fully from our school experience is to develop a more enhanced mentoring program, and especially enlisting the help of parents, senior citizens who would be a very, very good beneficial effect in networking and promoting student growth.
Anybody else? Shawn? Oh, you do want to. Okay. Question number 5 is going to first Peter and then Shawn. Here's the question. This is a 3-part question. How innovative and on the cutting edge of education do you think the school district should be? How well do you think the school district is executing towards that? And to the degree that the school district is falling short of your ideal, what changes would you want the district to make? And if the district is successfully working towards your ideal, what would you do to build upon that?
Big question. So, as far as the innovation and being on the cutting edge, I think there's a balance there. Obviously, you want a district that's as forward-looking as possible, but oftentimes the cutting edge is also the bleeding edge, right? So I want to balance innovation with making sure that we're looking at evidence-based and effective programming, making sure that we're implementing things that we know work and have been shown to work. As far as how well it's executing towards that, certainly over the last 10 years, there's been an evolution in the way the district has been looking at things. I think the strategic plan that was released a few years ago sets an ambitious vision for the district and lays out a vision for schools that are student-driven, that are bigger than just grades and tests. And I think that's really ambitious and is a good goal. One of my priorities would be to make sure that we execute on that, so that our kids have a well-rounded experience beyond just grades and tests. And the last part, as far as falling short, I think again, it's really just about laying out that ambition and executing towards it.
Thanks. Yeah, I would agree with Peter's point. I think that definitely, as a district that has a focus on excellence in education, that we want to make sure that we are offering and allowing our students to learn at with innovation and being abreast of the latest technologies, but we also want to make sure that we are using evidence-based practices as it relates to education, that we are, that we're also being cognizant of our budget and making sure that as we make sure that our students have the best access to innovation in education, that we're also doing it in a way that is responsible as it relates to how we're allocating resources to it. Do I think the district is doing well? I do. Again, I haven't introduced what you may have seen. I think I have a senior who's graduating this year, and I have a sophomore, both at Lower Merion, and we've been here for all 12 years. And they've done great, and we've been very pleased with the process. But I would say that, for me, I would love to see there continue to be opportunities for the students to have opportunities to go experience things internationally and get out of the country and live life outside of the classroom. My students have had that opportunity over the last couple of years in terms of engaging with nature and understanding things, being able to kind of touch and feel and have exposure to the arts. So I think all of those things will continue to add to the well-rounded and holistic education program.
No surprise here, I'll try to keep it to 2 minutes. So, wow, I think that the challenge that we're facing again is we have been very, very comfortable and very content for a very long time. And all of the easy solutions, they were easy, so we did them. And now we're at a very, very challenging point. We have financial constraints, and we have skyrocketing enrollment, and we have started to lag. We listen to our neighbors talk about how they're changing their programming, they're changing how what school starts times are, and we are falling behind on that. We are the ones who are waiting to see what everyone else does, and I'm not sure with the funding we have and the financing we have available to us and the education level of our parents, I really am very confused as to why we're not utilizing all those things. And we have a group of directors right now who unanimously vote every time after silence. There's no debate. And I think we do need to increase engagement amongst the directors as well as with the families and parents and neighbors. Sorry.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Question number 6 will be answered first by Subha and then by Tannia. Question. The last meeting of the school board's communication committee took place 6 months ago. Is the school board doing enough to ensure good communications with the non-school community? If not, in what ways can communication be improved?
Thank you. I am aware that the school board communications committee has been on hiatus at some point. I believe that that is because of conflicts in timing, but there has been school board communication. The board update goes out immediately after a board meeting where we have action items that we have voted on. And we also publish information on the website. In terms of the website, I know that it's one of the questions coming up, but the website is not as user-friendly as it can be. And we have made the attempt to make it more accessible for handicap purposes, but we need to make it more intuitive as well. In terms of the communications, I think we can do a better job of communicating with our non-school community. One of the things that everyone can sign up for, and maybe they don't know about it, is the board update that comes out after a school board meeting. So I invite everyone to go to the website, lmsd.org, and input your email address to receive the emails.
So I think that this might be a question of whether or not there's one-way communications. There's a lot of information that goes out from the school to the families. The information, sometimes an announcement will come out and the commissioners get it from their neighbors. So I think that the communications and engagement that has to happen not only within the school community but across Lower Merion and even with the neighboring schools, it has to be improved, it must. And I think that one of the ways is we need to stop using the word communication. They're great at talking to us. They're horrible at engaging with us. And if somebody says something or somebody says that they disagree with somebody, they get shut down or shamed. And that's why you don't see anybody. You see 9 people up there. There's a little bit of discussion from 2 people. And everyone else on the school board is silent. After speaking with neighbors, after knowing that there's concerns, they're never raised at the school board meetings. And that's something that I think dramatically needs to change. We can't keep having 9 versus 0 votes on everything. If we want to see engagement when they go and have these initiatives, like the school start time, we need to be able to think outside the box on what the solutions might be. Right now, I was talking with one of the people and they said, well, talking about how to transport children back and forth and what other ways there might be expanding these walk zones, etc., that's out of scope. If we're trying to solve problems, it can't be out of scope. You need to be able to hire an experienced facilitator that will be able to get those creative ideas, because some of those challenges might actually solve other problems as well. But if we're forbidden from speaking about them, either in the meetings or with our counterparts of Board of Commissioners or with the community and the citizens and the families, we are not going to be able to solve these problems. We will continue to see these numbers drop, and there's nothing, and we will have nobody to blame but ourselves.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to jump in? Okay. Question number 7 will be answered by first Lucy and then Mary. Here's the question. How would you handle a situation where the board wants to move in a certain direction and the superintendent disagrees?
I think the most important piece to remember when it comes to the superintendent and the school board is that the role of the school board is really to govern, but not to manage the, sorry. Is that better? Okay. I think the important part to remember is that the role of the school board is to govern, but not to individually manage. However, if the superintendent is going in a direction that the school board doesn't want, then that is exactly their role. Their role is to focus and make sure that the goals and the vision that the board has set forth, in this case, I think that's very much driven by the strategic plan that was adopted a few years ago. And that is very ambitious. It's incredibly ambitious. And there are a lot of pieces to that. And the role of the board is really to make happen within the district. And the board is his boss, or her boss, or the superintendent might get on.
I know that there have been disagreements, and the board does strive for consensus. Peter referenced that earlier. Of course, we know there are votes that make decisions for the board, by the board. I think that if I were on the board, if I'm elected to the board, and the current superintendent and I disagree, or the board disagrees with the superintendent, I would suggest we all sit together and share our perspectives on what we see is happening, what our goals are, and combine our efforts and work together, talk it out, and come to a consensus. I would not like to see a division between the superintendent and the school board. I think that would be very, very difficult for us as a community to absorb.
Anybody else? Question number 8. The first person to respond will be Shawn, and the second person will be Christina. Question: a quick review of the district website reveals that there is less user-friendly, detailed budget information available this year than there was 4 years ago. The lawsuit cites a concern about budget transparency and financial accountability. What financial information do you think the administration should provide to the public during the budget process, and why?
Thank you for the question. I do believe that there needs to be a clear and transparent budget process that the district shares with the community, and that we do as a community have a right to know as how our tax dollars are being used. My understanding is that the budget process that the school board follows was approved by the Department of Education and followed suit. I do understand that the lawsuit raises some concerns, but from my reading and understanding of the lawsuit at this point, is what I see is really a thinly veiled attack on public education and how the resources are spent, so I disagree with the approach of the lawsuit. And again, as it relates to the budget process and making sure that the district is transparent and well communicating with the public as it relates to the budget, I do believe that needs to be transparent and needs to be an open process. In terms of what parts of it, I would need to, having not sat on the school board, I would need to understand better what our existing process is, and then how to make sure that that is made available to the public.
So in terms of the financial information that the school board puts out, it is less and less every year because they don't want to be questioned. And that's not really fair because it's a public school and we own the public school, the people. So there should be as much as possible that is released because we have a lot of highly educated accountants, financial forensics, financial people that live in the school district that can go through that. And maybe they can come up with questions that challenge our board about how they're handling finances. The Walt case is a very nice and very talented and very intelligent Democrat that decided he was sick of the fact that the school board was basically overestimating what they needed in order to run the school district, and then coming in way under budget and then keeping the balance. And keeping the balance in the general fund, it's your taxes, they don't have the right to keep all of that in the general fund, and then sometimes moving it around. And the testimony of Mr. Orlando, showed that that's exactly what they were doing. So there's nothing veiled here. It's a very clear-cut case, and I think I hope that it is going to be solved appropriately. Anyway, what would I do? I would do as much information as possible in detail that's put out. I would do a wonderful summary with graphs so that the average layperson who is not very good at math or doesn't like math still can understand the finances of the school district. Why can't we do that? Why can't you have someone who puts a nice summary together that is not a school board employee, maybe even an outside group of citizens that would put together together a nice summary of what it was, so that really everybody could clearly understand how the budgeting process happened, what are the components of it, and what they may or may not agree with. I think information is critical to a democracy, and we're getting almost none when it comes to finances. So I feel pretty strongly on that, and I hope that we can fix it in the school district. Thank you very much.
As far as the Walk lawsuit, I don't think anything is clear cut. It's yet to be legislated in the courts still. The district seems to be pretty confident that they'll win, though as an outsider it's hard to say. It's clear that the lawsuit is aimed at defunding public education. The lawsuit says this much. It says that public education should be about meeting minimum mandates, and that anything above and beyond that should be for private schools. That being said, it's public school, these are public funds, we have a duty to be very transparent. Even above the fact that these are public funds, we have the highest per capita spending in the state. So we have a very, very high responsibility to be transparent. So I would support, obviously we're not going to go down to like item level detail on budgets, but there's a standard budgeting model that the state prescribes. You have standard accounts and line items. We should be releasing that information.
Anybody else? Okay. Question number 9 will be answered first by Tannia and then Mary. Do you believe LMSD is sufficiently fiscally responsible? Why or why not? If not, what improvements should be made?
So, again, I've been attending meetings for about 4 years, and I have, only once have I ever heard the administration propose an expense and had it challenged, and that was adding a third color. They were going to spend an extra $25,000 on a logo on a football field, and finally, some of us in the audience just raised our hands and said, wait a minute, we've been asking for safety improvements at our school, and you don't have the money, and you're about to spend this on red? Two-tone isn't good enough, and that was the first time that that they decided to actually pause and not approve an expense from the administration. I do believe that the role of a board, a governing board, is to provide oversight and governance. So I don't believe that their job is to rubber stamp everything. I don't think it's to agree with them. It's to hold them accountable. It's to be the elected officials. And if we are going to say that this board, that's our responsibility, it's also our duty. And it's our freedom to do that. So I do think that when you look at the things that have been spent, people have a million examples of things that they've seen the school district spend money on that they just are shocked by. And then you have other places where after the fact, because of poor planning, a program got cut back or a field trip got canceled for lack of funds. And that's not the way you should budget. And so I'm not sure if it's a lack of knowledge on the board or just that they don't want to step up and speak out. But for some reason, there has been no checks and balances when it comes to ensuring that money was spent wisely. And I do think that when you look at where we are going and the challenges that we face in the expense of the new school, I think it's really critical that that we start hearing in the next few months a little more conversation on the board and going forward when it comes to those expenses and how we're going to meet the needs of all these kids that are coming into our district.
When I see the term fiscally, I interpret it in terms of a fiscal year, and the school district does prove fiscal responsibility in terms of paying bills, deciding the budget, paying the bills. So that's one view of fiscal responsibility, and I think for that we can be appreciative. If there is also in this question a regard or concern for transparency, then it does seem apparent among us here, sitting before you, that there is a need for greater transparency, that the community, the citizen taxpayer would like to see more readable, more comprehensible breakdowns of the budget and the expenditures. So I will join my colleagues in saying, yes, we need more transparency, and I think that a user-friendly approach is good. I know there are, Peter referenced the state recommendation on how one can structure and present a budget.
Christina?
I do think we have a problem with fiscal responsibility. In the 1960s, we had over 10,000 students that Lower Merion School District was educating, and we had one of the lowest level of taxes. We have always had a strong tradition here in Lower Merion of Quaker principles, and they're frugal principles. A great education is not about the money that you throw at it. You need certain minimums, but it's not about the money that you throw at it. We are currently at, 8,500, something like that, and all the studies show that we're going to peak out in about 3 years. And yet we're about to build a school and submit ourselves to another 250 million or more probably in debt that would put a whole lot more tax burden on all of us. I think we need to be looking more creatively at solutions that are not just about high tech and world-class this facility and that facility. And I think we need to be a little bit more frugal and provide a better education at a better price. I don't think we're doing it. My son's trip was canceled last year, the one he was most excited about to go to, and he hadn't been on one in years, to go to the Wells Fargo Center for his sports management class. And it was canceled because there wasn't enough money for the one bus in the spring to get him over there. So I think there's something wrong with how we are managing that. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
I think Tannia hit on a very important piece of the fiscal responsibility, and it's something that I think Tannia hit on a very important piece of the fiscal responsibility that's going to really impact the board over the next however many years, and that is enrollment growth. The enrollment at Lower Merion, it has increased to 21% over the last, I think, 10 years, which is more than double any other district in this state. And with that, it's very expensive, and I think that the board will need to be very, very creative in looking at ways to be able to manage that enrollment growth. That includes additional teachers so that we can keep our class sizes small, and other priorities that the board has had to provide an excellent education.
Okay, question number 10. First be answered by Shayna and then by Shawn. Question is, recently the school board has threatened to seize Stoneleigh through eminent domain. It is also argued that LMSD should be exempt from the township's land use regulations. What do you believe is the proper balance between educational needs and other community needs and values?
So I will preface this by saying my background is in education. I am not a lawyer. My knowledge of the technicalities of specific zoning regulations is not exacting. What I do know is that Lower Merion is small, and finding a space for our new school, which is incredibly necessary for the rate of enrollment growth, like Lucy just stated, is really necessary. All of our schools are overcrowded, and to maintain the low class sizes that our students deserve and our families expect, we need the new space. To get that, going back to Lower Merion being small, there's not an abundance of spaces where that school could have been put. I know there were some other discussions of things like the seminary, which was not actually available to the district, and so eminent domain seemed to be the only way to do that, and the district got it done in a way that seemed to be acceptable, or it is not done, is working on it in a way that seems to be acceptable. That is my understanding of it. I think that community needs and values education. I don't think those two things are antithetical. I think that setting the school district in opposition to our community is absurd. Our school district is one of the pride and joys of living in Lower Merion. It's why so many of us came here, and I think that working together with our community to serve the needs of the school serves our community.
Thanks. Yes, so I agree with Shayna. I definitely do not see education and community needs as being something that's diametrically opposed. You know, my wife and I made the decision to move to Lower Merion 12 years ago because of the public school system, because we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide our boys, world-class education and do that through a public school system as opposed to paying all of that money into private schools. So I believe, and I have a political science and public administration background, so eminent domain is not something that's unique or used necessarily as a bully pulpit, but it is as a public, education is a public good, and the district, being a public entity, can use that to move towards obtaining and creating or accessing something for the greater public good through the use of eminent domain. And so again, I would hope, and I know that there has been lots of conversation, lots of dialogue, lots of back and forth within the community as it relates to whatever the spaces that we've encountered, or the district has accessed for the building of this public school. So I definitely would say that I do not believe that there is an opposition between public education, or between the value of education and community needs, and that we would and need to continue to work very closely with our community to make sure that we're working in concert and not against.
I just wanted to comment on the argument that LMSD should be exempt from the township's land use regulations, and that is not at all what we are asking for. We are asking to be treated differently than private schools. Similarly to the township, we are a public good, and we need to have that opportunity to exert our influence on the neighborhood. When we close our doors, we open them again to the township, to participants who play in sports, leagues, mainline school night. I don't see Haverford School or Baldwin School offering those. Thank you.
I think that what happened with Stoneleigh broke a trust. I think it was horrible. The school district went after that, and after 40,000 people signed a petition, the microphone off. So the fact that it was a unanimous vote to send out that eminent domain letter is a disgrace. We need to have a group of people that are willing to look at creative solutions. The 1860 property was approved.
Mike, can you, Shawn, can you just pass that over Mike? Sorry.
The 1860 property was presented by the realtor to the administration, who did not share with all 9 board members. That came to the attention of the public because I brought it up at a public board meeting. And I'm the one who contacted, I went through a lot of legwork to get that thing publicized because it didn't fit the exact mold of exactly what they wanted. Only St. Charles did, and then Stoneleigh, or else. They were going to build at all those other schools. And they didn't look for any creative solutions, and that's why they didn't present 1860 themselves. And so I just think that when we start talking about where they can build or how they can build, and the fact that they don't have to worry about the fact that there's no other facility where this many children are walking there. We have to keep that in mind when we build.
Question number 11. The first respondent will be Lucy, and then Subha. Later start times for high school and middle school students have been a topic of conversation by the administration, the board, and parents for at least a decade. Since 2015, the CDC, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Academy of Sleep Medicine have all recommended a start time of 8:30 or later for middle and high school students to optimize health and learning. Recently, Radnor and TE both voted to push back their start times. Every LMSD board candidate in forums like these have said they support later start times and LMSD should make the change. How important is this to you? When should LMSD implement later high school starts? And how would you recommend getting there?
The research on adolescent sleep is clear. Later school start times are better for high school students. The reality is, though, that change is hard, and change management is critical. I want to see the start times for high school students to be later. I think it really speaks to the strategic plan, it speaks to the holistic needs of kids, it will help with stress, it will help with just the overall circadian rhythm that that teenagers have. But I think that we do need to acknowledge that there are costs to this, and so we need to be careful when we're doing it. We all talk about fiscal responsibility. Well, this is part of it as well. Even something that as a community we feel is a positive and a really good change, we need to make sure that we do it correctly, which is why I think that the district is taking longer than other places to do that. Most notably are the transportation costs. We, in addition to transporting our own students, Lower Merion transports about 1,800 private school kids to about 130 other schools. That is unique to Lower Merion School District. While the state requires that every public school transport kids, we have many more than other school districts, including TE and including Radnor. One piece with TE is that they are pushing back by a certain amount, but perhaps we in Lower Merion will take a little bit of longer time. I agree that there should be a facilitator and there's a community group that's looking at this that hopefully will be able to address it. I just want to do a quick comment that I don't think that athletics are as big of a concern as many people do. My daughter's a three-sport or varsity athlete. She does not miss very much school at all, much less than people would expect. But I actually think the bigger challenge will be community access to fields, and that the district really needs to be proactive, working with community groups to manage this change. And that speaks to the previous question as well about community engagement and working well with both schools and township.
I agree with Lucy's comments. We have a facilitator that we've hired for those of you who don't know me, I'm on the school board, so I speak, I guess, differently than the prospective candidates. We have hired a facilitator to help in terms of logistics and other needs. We're hoping that the community will come up with a solution or a suggestion by the end of the year, and we plan on acting upon that as soon as they want us to act upon it. We are taking this very seriously. We would like to see, school start times pushed back. However, Radnor and TE have a 2-tier bus system, whereas we have the 3-tier bus system. We need to purchase 47 new buses in order to go to a 2-tier system. And that's something that we have decided not to do. And so we need to continue to look at this issue and hone in on the possibilities. Thank you.
Yes. Question number 12. First respondent will be Merion and then Subha. Are there any accommodations the board should be willing to make to facilitate mediation or a settlement of the Wall lawsuit? If yes, what might those be? If not, then explain.
The Wall lawsuit, class action suit, has dominated to a great extent our perspectives on how our citizen taxpayer money is spent, and it's a very serious issue. In trying to get updated information, I was stymied left and right, but my understanding is that the Judge Smythe ruling is under review, and that the school district, Merion School District, has offered details to support its case in the Judge Smythe ruling. I know, as Christina had said, that Arthur Walk is a lifelong Democrat, and I believe that he is an advocate of the citizen taxpayer. I don't agree with all of his public statements. That's not what I'm addressing. I believe that the concern expressed by Judge Smythe's ruling does put a lens on how the citizen taxpayer money is spent. It's very important for us to realize in this community, we have many senior citizens, we have many single parents, we have families who don't have dramatically high incomes, we have young professionals who are starting families, we have a lot of variation in income in this Lower Merion Northwest community. We need to take that very seriously. If I'm elected to the school board, I will communicate, I won't use that word, Tannia, sorry. I will make sure that I reach out to all of our constituents in terms of citizen taxpayers.
Okay, actually, if I may, I'm gonna, can you pass the mic back? I didn't get an answer to the question, so I'm gonna ask the timekeeper to give you 30 seconds more. The question was, are there any accommodations the board should be willing to make to facilitate mediation or settlement of the lawsuit? Do you have an answer for that?
I will. It presumes that I would have some influence, so I will continue. I would, through a mediator, ask for a meeting with Arthur Law, with all the interested parties from the school board, and establish a common ground that we do care about education of every student in this school district. We can establish that in very many ways without accelerating or escalating to anger levels. And I believe that a mediator wisely chosen with the school board and Arthur Walk and colleagues, other community members, I believe and I'm optimistic that that would be effective.
Thank you. I don't believe that a facilitator would be appropriate at this time. The Supreme Court has just remanded the case back down to the Court of Common Pleas, and we have not yet been heard based on the facts of the case. So I would say that in terms of the Wolf lawsuit, that a mediation would be not very fruitful at this time.
Anybody else? Okay, question 13. The first respondent will be Christina and then Peter. What's your view about the proper use of technology and screen time in the classroom, and at what age should the technology screen time begin?
This one's actually a very complex question because as time goes by, there's more and more studies that show that different ages should or should not be on screens at certain amounts of time. I think we do currently introduce technology in the elementary school, which we have to because that's the world. We have to make sure they are technology savvy. But I think we need to limit it, and I'm not sure exactly how much of a limit, but I do think we need to limit it. I think that as they get older into middle school and high school, there's going to need to be more screen time because that is the way of the world. And college is completely all electronic, everything that you do. But I think we have to stop relying on technology to do a lot of the teaching in the classroom. My child spends a lot of time at home going on these different programs, Khan Academy, et cetera, and they can be useful. I'm not saying they're not useful, but the level of the number of minutes and the number of times he has to get on these different programs in order to get through that piece for that class, I believe it's really just a replacement for the teacher. I don't understand why there has to be so much of that at home. So I don't know what your children's experience is, but mine is that there's a lot of those programs that are engaged at home, and I think there should be less of it. I'm not saying it shouldn't be used. I think this is a developing conversation, and I think we have to be looking at it every year, and we have to ask experts to come into our school district and talk to us about this, because there's also an element of the lack of ability to sleep when the children are on too much screen time at night. So most of the adults that I know have had to buy the glasses that take the certain lights off of the blue light out, because that's the light of dawn, and it actually helps them sleep. We need to also employ some of those simple technologies like glasses for maybe the older children that are on those screens so much during the day, so that they actually can tap back into their natural circadian rhythm and their biological rhythm. I think my time's up, but is it up? Nope. Oh, sorry. So anyway, okay, so just to finalize, it's a very important topic. We really need to stay on top of it. It actually affects their health too. So we do need to stay on top of it. Thank you.
Okay, this is fun. So I work in technology. In fact, part of my consulting practice, I help schools integrate technology and use data to make better informed decisions. but I'm going to come across a little bit like I'm a Luddite when it comes to this. So, study after study shows that sort of the magic of education is really the interaction between the student and the teacher. That's where up to 80% of the effect of education comes from. So I view technology largely as a supplement to that. And so it's less around control and decreasing the amount of time, but you have to have a purpose. What's the purpose for integrating technology? Where is it being integrated? What value is it going to be to the student? So if we start top down and have a strategy for where technology is going to be useful, it'll be much more beneficial to the kids. As far as what age, there's I forget which organization just made a recommendation about what age and how many hours you can control it, starting at like 3, at this many minutes. And so I think we can follow those guidelines, but we definitely want to make sure that our students are tech savvy and computer literate by the time they graduate, and we just have a strategy to build them up from the time they're we get them in kindergarten until they graduate. As kids can write papers, they know how to do research, and that they can use them as tools rather than being just a place to waste time.
Anybody else? Question 14 will be answered by first Shawn and then Lucy. LMSD teachers are the highest paid in the state. How can we identify, reward, and cultivate great teachers, and what should be done with mediocre or ineffective ones?
Well, thanks for the question. I think that as a school board director, again, as Lucy stated previously, I think our role is really around setting policy and governing and making sure that things are moving forward, whereas the day-to-day management and implementation with something such as this around teachers, doing the assessment of teachers and making sure that we're weeding out those that are mediocre and ineffective and rewarding those that are successful is something that we would entrust the superintendent to do. With that said, I believe that that we have, again, our focus on excellence and making sure that our students are receiving the best possible education is our priority and would continue to be my priority as a school board official. But what that process is, I would definitely look to our administration to put forth and present a process that would do that, make sure that that assessment is happening, making sure that we are looking at how to both make sure that we are providing opportunities for professional development for our teachers, while we're also making sure that there is effective assessment happening. Again, it is a major contribution, it's a major part of the budget in terms of teacher salaries, and we don't take it lightly, and we just need to make sure that the systems are in place to make sure that they're being assessed properly.
I think teacher quality in our schools is a really important issue. Unfortunately, I am not an HR professional, so in terms of specifics on what should be done with mediocre teachers, I'm not sure how that works. Most specifically because when I have 3 kids in the schools, I have one at each high school, my youngest is at Welch Valley, they've gone through Merion schools, starting at Penn Valley, for all of their schools. We've had some amazing teachers, and we've had some really not so amazing teachers. Although at the same time, I've learned that sometimes my student thinks a teacher is amazing, or my family's had a great experience with that teacher, and another family's had a really poor experience. So I think that there is some balance there in terms of how you identify and determine who's really a good teacher or not. I do think that there is a reliance on testing and test scores on providing evaluations of teachers, and I don't think that that's a great way to evaluate teachers. I mean, it can be a piece of it, but I don't think that that gets to the overall idea of what a great teacher is, and I would like to see more student and family input. I don't know exactly how you make that work, but I think that it's something that could be done and should be done in terms of evaluation of teachers. It is frustrating though, when you get, your student has a teacher that is sort of known to be not a great teacher, yet there seems to be, or what come across, or we're sort of told, are legal reasons for not being able to get rid of teachers, and that is difficult. And I think that that's something that the board needs to manage, or I guess more govern and manage, and work with the superintendent and to come up with ways that there can be, the media for teachers could be addressed. And part of that is professional development and figuring out how we can make that teacher a better teacher, not to just say that that teacher is bad and that's it.
Two more. Question 15 will be answered first by Peter and then by Tannia. Currently, the school district offers full-day kindergarten to students who are not school-ready. Expanding this option to all students, assuming classroom space is available, would require adding a minimum of 12 new teachers at a cost of $1.3 million annually. It might also add to enrollment pressure by making the district more attractive to young families. Some people say full-day kindergarten should be offered to no students. Some say we should keep the status quo, and others say we should expand the program to offer it to all students. Which of these options, assuming classroom space is available, would you support and why?
So I'll start by saying notionally I support the idea of full-day kindergarten. I think there's a real question of how we're going to pay for it. We certainly don't have unlimited funds, and we've already talked at length tonight about the budget pressures already on the district. We have a set of priorities that we've laid out, including the strategic plan, including the new building. There's a lot of commitments already on the books. If this was something that we were going to explore, we would need broader consensus and ability to figure out how to pay for it, either by re-engineering the budget or getting broad consensus that we were willing to invest that money. I think that the evidence is pretty clear though that starting kindergarten and a well-run kindergarten makes a dramatic impact on kids' lives. So notionally support, but not sure how it will be implemented or how we'll pay for it yet.
So I love Peter's answer. Again, we can come up with a million we'd love to have. This is probably one of the most critical ones. And it's just a matter of what we're willing to trade off to have it. It's not just 12 teachers. Right now, 40% of the children who join Lower Merion join in first grade. So we only have 60% of the kids going to the half-day program. So 20 kids per classroom, you can put 40 kids in each classroom. It's half in the morning, half in the afternoon. If we make it full-day kindergarten, we have to assume those 40% will come in kindergarten. So it's not just a couple of, it's not just 12 more teachers, it'll probably be about 30 more. It'll take the program, it'll take the problem we just solved, relieving the pressure from the elementary schools, and it'll double it back in. Maybe not double, but it'll make it really significant. The problem will be back. I think that if we wanted to look into this, we need to see what the trade-offs would be, and we need to start building the flexibility in. When we first started talking about 1860 as a middle school, we suggested that, I'll speak loud, we suggested that it be, if there was ways of designing it so that it could later be adjusted to cover 6th through 9th, that might provide the flexibility we need as the population goes through the schools. But right now, as the plan stands, where they're only building it to 5th through 8th, I just don't see how, with the cost that we are then going to have at the high school level, again, demographers might not be perfect, but they're expecting 500 more high school students as well. So with no plan in place yet for how to really handle that, no discussion about what's going to be cut back, I don't see, if this is important, then we have to talk about what is more important than. And right now, that we don't even have the structure to have that level of engagement, to discuss what the priorities of the community are, to ensure that we've engaged everyone to understand what it is. We just can't do it yet.
Shayna.
Hi, so I will admit that this is my personal passion. I know that everybody's talked about what a difficult lift it's going to be, and I understand that it is not a free thing to do, but I also know that if we don't start the conversation, it will never happen. I personally have a daughter who's going to start kindergarten in the fall, and so I know these families that have young kids, and I swear to you, every person that I've talked to, as I was talking about running for school board, and I asked my friends and the people I meet, what do you think about the schools? And they'd say to me, well, it's such a pain in the neck to have to navigate the kindergarten thing, and I'll tell you, it's costing my family and other family thousands and thousands of dollars, and that's not an insubstantial thing. I also don't think that adding any new feature to our school district is a reason. Adding any new program could theoretically entice new families to come here, and I don't think that that's a valid reason not to look at another program. I would want to talk to neighboring districts, to their school boards, to really analyze how they were able to do it in recent years in Radnor and Upper Merion townships.
Thank you. Last question. Christina will answer first, and then Shayna. Question is, what 4 goals should the board set for the superintendent next year?
Okay, I'm sure there are many important goals. I think what I would do is I would first, I still question the value of the new middle school. If there were 10,000 students in the 60s and by 1980s we were 5,400 or 5,500, and now we're on our way back up again and we're going to max out, closing in on 9,000, and then we're going to start heading down again in 3 years. We will head down again. That's the cycle of school districts. Then I think a priority is still to look at working with the commissioners on coming up with a way to build up and temporary classrooms and temporary ways that we have room in a number of our schools to get through this however many years, so that we are not stuck with the empty buildings that we had before and all of the surplus that we had before, because it will happen. So I still think that's a priority to ask our superintendent to continue to look at. I think we should have a new plan to make sure that we are only hiring highly inspirational teachers, whether it's a temporary hire or where they have to show that piece before they are a permanent hire. I'm not sure what we could work out with the teachers organization. I think we need to have a more interactive program with the world in terms of all the education that we provide. And I think that would be a priority to me, to sort of re-engage all of our students in the learning process. And I think it needs to permeate the entire system. And lastly, I actually agree with Shayna that I think it's time to talk about kindergarten. It is not fair to spend almost $32,000 per year per child and not offer a full package of education to our great members of the Lower Merion population. So I think we should look at kindergarten and we should figure it out because everything we've talked about, including start times, is going to cost money. So you just have to decide what the priorities are as a board member to do that. So that would be, I guess, my 4 top choices at the moment, and then sort of slide in a more fiscal responsibility. So, thank you.
Okay, so first and foremost, the priority that the board needs to set for the superintendent is academic excellence. It's what our taxpayers expect for our students, and it's what our students deserve. Everything that he can do to be supporting that goal for our teachers and for our kids and for our families is the utmost priority for our superintendent. Secondly, with regards to enrollment growth, as we've stated before, there's been a 21% enrollment growth in the last 10 years in our district, and the new middle school is absolutely necessary at this point. Class sizes are ballooning, portables are being erected. We need to be able to change the way that the schools are arranged so that we can lower our class size back down. Another focus I want is on equity, and what that means to me is really focusing on having each student get what they need and not necessarily on giving every kid the exact same thing, which would tie into kids that fall into the achievement gap, kids that are in gifted programs, kids that are in special education, and kids that are in our regular education program. And the last one I would say would be to work on absolutely to prioritize fiscal responsibility, both for the board and for the superintendent. I know that the district has a lot of program evaluations working, and I think that that's a really good tool for the district to be using because it lets us highlight what programs and what interventions and what curricula are working for our students and therefore getting us the most bang for our buck. It also then shows us what's not really having any positive effect, and so going forward, I think a really great way that we can be more fiscally responsible and that priority is to support those programs that are working for our students and to possibly eliminate programs that are showing no effect via those evaluations. Thank you.
Yes, want to jump in? Okay, that wraps up the question and answer portion of the forum, and we can proceed with closing remarks. So we're going to start with 1 and go through 8. So we'll be starting on the audience is right and moving down to the left. So first up is Peter Lee.
So I've lived in Lower Merion since 2007. We have 3 kids. We have 1 at every level of school right now. And you know, I have to say, the district's not perfect, but my kids have had a great experience. I guess they should, considering how much money we spend. But I think we do have some challenges ahead of us. You know, my background is in technology and data analytics. I think I bring some skills to the table that aren't currently represented on the board. I can help make good decisions. I can help, you know, bring an analytical bent to things. So I hope I get your support.
Tannia.
Hi. For those who don't know, my name is Tannia Schrieber, and I've spent over 20 years working in human resources, change management. I've negotiated labor contracts. I have a degree from Cornell in Industrial and Labor Relations, an MBA from Wharton in Strategic Management and Marketing. I am passionate about creating a vision for what the potential could be for these children, for deciding to work with the community to figure out what our aspirations are and what this school district could be, and then asking them whether or not they want to talk about, have a dialogue about how we can get there. I think we need to first make the decision that we aren't going to be completely committed to what we are now if we want to have the potential of becoming something greater. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I know you're very busy and you've been so attentive. I'm interested in serving you on the school board so that I can bring my 45 years of experience teaching. My husband and I have raised 5 children in Lower Merion schools, and I expect to work very hard for you.
My name is Subha Robinson. I want to thank the Merion Civic Association and the other candidates for this forum. I'm a 23-year resident of Lower Merion Township, and I live in Gladwin with my husband and 4 children who all attended or currently attend Lower Merion schools. I'm passionate about education and the opportunity it creates for our students. Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. I'm a strong believer in the power of education to shape an individual's future, and I have chosen to give back to my community by being a school board director. I hope I can count on your vote. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Shawn. I've been a resident in Penwyn neighborhood in Lower Merion for the last 12 years. 2 sons that currently attend Lower Merion High School. One's about to graduate as a sophomore. I've been working in philanthropy and working on issues around social justice for the last 20 years or so, and really am passionate about education and have been a very active parent and school participant, serving on the Achievement Gap, Achievement Imperative Task Force the last 2 years. Just really look forward to being able to contribute to this community that's given my family so much, and look forward to serving you.
Thank you to the Merion Civic Association for the opportunity to be here. I hope I've shown you tonight that I have a truly deep knowledge of this district, both its strengths and its weaknesses. As a board member, I will advocate for an educational environment where all students have the opportunity to reach their full potential, including working to eliminate the achievement gap and ensure appropriate and inclusive education for all students. I will use my skills to make informed, well-grounded financial decisions and instill an environment that is receptive and responsive to the community at large. I value the act of listening and making thoughtful decisions, but I'm not afraid to ask the hard questions and to take a stand when necessary. My service to the school board can contribute a voice that is reasoned and experienced, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you for inviting me tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Christina Fink. I am the only Republican up here. And I'm a moderate Republican, married to a Democrat. I'm a University of Penn grad. I worked in big corporate for years. I own my own small business. I have 3 boys that have gone through the school district for all of their years. One gifted, one with an IEP. I've been a mom in the school district for 19 consecutive years. I have history. That can be very helpful. I have very strong business and analytical skills that I think are lacking on the school board. I'm very creative and high energy. I love kids. I'm passionate about education. And why would you want to vote for a Republican? Because sometimes it is very, very helpful for you to have constructive discourse. When you have everybody of one tribe, it is useful to have somebody that comes in there and asks some hard questions that isn't as comfortable. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope you will vote for me.
Thank you. My name is Shayna Kalish. I live in Merion Station with my husband and our 2 kids, Nina, who's 5, and will be starting at Kinwood Elementary in the fall, and Wes, who will be 2 this summer. As the parent of young kids, I bring a really unique perspective to the board. Historically, many board members have had older children, and I look forward to representing a group of parents that have kids at the elementary level. I have a background in education. I have a Master's of Science from Penn State in educational psychology, where I focused on reading and testing and program evaluation and supporting students with learning disabilities. As such, my real priority for our schools is academic excellence. And my desire for the school board is I really want to serve my community, and I'm looking forward to your vote next week and 2 weeks from now.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for participating tonight and for your thoughtful responses. I thought you all did a really super job, and I'd like to ask the audience to give all the candidates a round of applause. The Merion Civic Association would like to thank the Tribute House for generously providing space, and we'd also like to thank Jerry Sanger for recording the event. Thank you, Jerry. Finally, thanks to the other civic associations, the Federation of Civics, the Commissioners, and LMSD for promoting the event through their listservs. As a reminder, this forward can be viewed on our Facebook page within the next few days. Please share that information with your friends and neighbors who are not able to attend tonight. I'd also like to note that the expanded packet of candidate information will also be available on the Civic Facebook page. And by expanded, I mean after the candidates have an opportunity to augment their responses. We hope you'll vote on May 21st, and thank you all and have a good evening.